Well, hi and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to be learning about social exclusion and segregation and marginalization. So we are going to learn about what are the differences between these three and how do they work. So what are they? Let's get started with this. So first of all, we are going to talk about what is social exclusion. Well, so what is social exclusion? It's about people being basically, excluded. We'd like to use that word, right? So what do we mean by that? People who are denied access to what? Access to resources, access to opportunities and rights. So as a result of which they are prevented from fully participating in social, economic and political life, right? So social exclusion is basically a form of discrimination, often in many cases, right? So it is a result of discrimination in many cases, and people can be socially excluded in a whole lot of ways. It could be discrimination, it could be institutional, because of law. Let's just say the law does not extend its rights and privileges to everybody. It could be on account of how infrastructure is developed, and everybody does not have equal access to equal developmental parameters, and so people are excluded from benefits. Or let's just say one kind of infrastructure, we could say digital, right? So there could be a digital divide between rural areas and urban areas, and people in rural areas may find themselves more excluded, right? So exclusion can be a result of discrimination, can be institutional, can be based on infrastructure, can be based on how the economy works. Opportunities may be available to some people and other people may be excluded from those opportunities. They may not have, let's just say, access to credit facilities because they do not have a good credit rating, because they do not have sufficient money, they don't have a CIBIL score, maybe they're working in the informal sector and they're not able to access good formal credit, right? So they may be excluded from access to that, right? So this is the way we talk about what social exclusion is. And then moving on, right, to segregation. Okay, so what is segregation? All right, well, segregation basically means often separate and unequal. Separate and unequal. So segregation often is physical in nature, right? Physical in the sense of spatial, right? In an area, let's just say, think about a residential neighborhood, that some people are are living in slums, so they're physically separate and segregated in an area, and other people may be living in, let's just say, gated communities, upper class communities, right? So there is a physical segregation, right? So there is a physical spatial part to the segregation, or it could also be institutional, right? Institutional, right, which is something which is structural, and we can think about it something that works in an organized manner. Let's just say, for example, caste based segregation that exists. So on the basis of caste, what happens is that there are different people in the classical traditional society into different occupations, and there is a social and institutional segregation, right, that is done. So often this is separate, right, and there is unequal, right? And whether that unequal is good or bad, for a lot of people often it ends up being bad. They are at the disprivileged end of it, and for some people it may even be good, right? That segregation, right, it may benefit them. So this is what we mean by segregation. And then getting on to marginalization. So what is marginalization? Well, it's about reducing the influence of some individual or community, reducing their importance, the kind of importance that they get with regards to, let's just say, their representation, right? Let's just say in politics, or in decision making, in governance structures, or with the kind of significance that they have, right? How much do they matter? How much what they say matters? How much policies that they care about matter? So marginalization is the process through which individuals or groups are pushed. Now this is an important phrasing of it, the way that we're articulating it, pushing them to the periphery, which means the outskirts of society, right? Where their voice matters less, where what they do becomes less important, right? Where there is reducing significance and influence and access to resources. So there may not be, you can think about it like this, there may not be complete denial, right? That may not be the case, right? They may be part of formal structures. Let's just say the religious minority may be a part of the democratic governance systems, but they may only have, let's just say, token representation, right? So what policy matters to them, right, is of very much less significance because their representation is token representation, right? And so while they're part of the formal institutional process, but the significance, right, or the influence or the access to resources that they have may be less. So you can think about it like, again, that let's just say women are a part of multiple different organizations, but often they are underrepresented at the upper hierarchies, at the upper levels of organizational structures. And so there is this thing called the glass ceiling effect, right? So glass ceiling effect basically means that women are underrepresented at the upper hierarchies of organizations, and so what they do in power structures, in influence, matters less while they are a formal part of the structure. So the influence is being reduced, the significance is being reduced, and so this is marginalization, right? So now that we have spoken about these three forms, right, what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at how this interacts with other things, right? So we and in this explanation that we're talking about, there is also a PDF of this, and you can find that PDF down below, right? If you click that link in the YouTube video, right, in the drop down menu, right, then there is a PDF and you can take a look at it for what we're discussing in this video. Also, it would be great if you subscribe, right, and like, and maybe share what do you think about the video, right? And you can share, you can comment, right, you can do all of that, and that would be great for us. All right, so let us get on to what is the relationship between first of all social exclusion and marginalization. So social exclusion, right, which is not marginalization. So this Venn diagram shows here, this part of the graph, right, this part of the graph shows social exclusion, which is not marginalization. And so what is that? So let's just say people could be excluded on account of the digital divide, right? So in rural urban areas, people may not have, let's just say, access, or it could be a class divide. People who are lower in the class structure, right, they may not have access to digital devices, internet, and so they are being excluded from it. But this is not marginalization. Again, we find that there is language, right? There's a lot of languages which may not be recognized. Let's just say in India, there are 22 scheduled languages which have all equal importance, but there are a lot of other languages which are not officially recognized. So let's just say, for example, Tulu, right, which is spoken in the coastal areas of Karnataka, right, is an official language of the people who speak there, and they've been speaking it for a long time, but it's not officially recognized. And so, when it's a question of entry to jobs or about other opportunities, people may face social exclusion because their language is not recognized, right? And then access to formal credit facilities, right? So we may find that people may not, let's just say, have a CIBIL score because they do not have sufficient good stable incomes, or they have not taken credit cards before and they're not eligible, and so they may be denied to access to formal credit. So all these are social exclusions, formal social exclusion, which is not marginalization. Then we'll take a look at marginalization, which is not social exclusion, right? So we may find that religious minorities may have token political representation, right, as we took an example before. So that's not social exclusion because this is not complete denial. They are part of the structure, but their influence is less. Similarly, we took a gender example, right? Now, what is this area which is both social exclusion and marginalization? So this is a lot of the discussions that we have which are common. So discrimination against women on the basis of patriarchy, or against tribals or LGBTQ community or Dalits, a large part of that discrimination is both denial, which would constitute social exclusion, and marginalization, reducing of the significance and importance of their contribution and their rights, and that is marginalization. And a large part of the discrimination against these is both, right? So that would be this overlap area here. All right. Now let's get over to looking at the overlap between segregation and marginalization. So as we've said before, that segregation is, this physical separation or social institutional separation. So we're looking at segregation, which is not marginalization, first of all. So segregation, let's look at, people who are living in upper class gated communities, right? So these are privileged circles. So they're physically separate, but this does not result in marginalizing them, undervaluing them, reducing their significance, right? There are these men only clubs often where women are not a part of it. So that's segregation. There are caste communities which are organized, on the caste basis, but it's in a beneficial way. For example, the Marwadi business community in India, right, has these, there's a lot of diamond merchant trade and other exclusive trades that they do on caste patterns, which are good, great, privileged business circles, right? So it's segregation, but it is not marginalization, right? Their contribution is not being undervalued. So then let's take a look at marginalization, which is not segregation. So what are we saying? Basically, the people who are individuals or groups who are being marginalized may not be living physically separate from other people, right? Let's just say women are living in the same neighborhood as you are, in your same family, right? But their contributions are being valued less. Let's just say in an organization with the glass ceiling effect, right? People who belong to alternate sexuality or minority sexuality groups, right? They may be living in the same neighborhood as you, lesbians or gays or bisexuals or transgenders, but what they do matters much less. They may have much lesser voice and representation. So tribal status, right? Tribal communities may be underrepresented in governance structures, and that may be another case. So there is marginalization, which is not segregation. And then we come to what is both, right? So a lot of cases often segregation does result in marginalization. So for example, racial discrimination in South Africa, the apartheid regime, right? There, we find that there was this segregation on the basis of race. We definitely remember the Gandhiji story, right? So separate compartments in the train, different for whites, different for dark-skinned people. So that's both segregation, and it results in marginalization, reducing the significance and importance and sidelining and pushing to the periphery. And then on a class basis, we can see slums as physical segregation, which results in marginalization. And on a caste basis, let's just say manual scavengers, so we have people who are engaged in the cleaning of septic tanks in sewerage pipes, and nearly all of the people who are engaged in this belong to certain so-called lower caste communities. So that is segregation, social institutional. It is also marginalization. All right. Okay. And so now we're coming over to this last part, right, of comparison here, where we are comparing segregation and social exclusion. So there is segregation, which is not social exclusion. And why is that? So that could be on the grounds of self-imposed isolation. So let's just say a religious community, right? It seeks to segregate itself. It is living in a neighborhood, right? So one area is, let's just say, of a particular religious community, and another religious community is living in another area, right? And why is that? People could do that not only on account of discrimination, but because, let's just say, they find cultural homogeneity. They find that there are other people like them who they find it easier to understand. When people move into a new city, they may find that already they may have their church, or masjid, or gurdwara, or any other religious place already in that area. And whatever their food preferences are, they may find that they're already available in that area. And they may find that other kinds of preferences of whatever sort they may have. Let's just say sometimes there may be security concerns, and they may feel secure in strength of numbers. And so on account of such reasons, not discrimination, self-imposed isolation, there may be segregation as well, right? So this is segregation, which is not a result of social exclusion. And then getting to social exclusion, which is not segregation. So for example, in the economy, we have people who are in informal jobs, and there's a lot of high cost of living. And so they are excluded from good opportunities in society, from partaking in, let's just say, high quality education, having access to it, or a lot of other opportunities. They're being socially excluded because they've got, on a class structure, they have, less money, right? But this is not physical segregation. This is not social institutionalized segregation. It's just that some people have, let's just say, on account of working informal jobs or having high cost of living, they are not able to access those services. So that is social exclusion still, but it is not segregation. And then there is the overlap area, which is both segregation and social exclusion, which is quite common the case. So again, racial segregation in South Africa, slums segregation, as well as social exclusion for a lot of people, that is a result of social exclusion. And caste-based occupation, right? So where there is segregation, and that is also a result of discrimination, because people have been discriminated against, and there is social exclusion. So what we've just established is this relationship between all these various different aspects of social exclusion and segregation and marginalization. And we'd like to briefly and quickly take a look at the kind of questions that we've had from these topics. So these are questions that you can practice. And for these questions, right, you may also find, for example, for this one and for this one, right, you may find already YouTube videos that we've put on the channel, in the same channel, and you can read through, you can look at those answers, and you can download model answers for them as well. So we'll take a quick look. How is poverty a form of social exclusion? How is poverty a form of social exclusion? Illustrate in this connection the different dimensions of poverty and social exclusion, right? So please do answer that question. Think about the answer. How are hierarchy and exclusion the major impediments in the transformation of societies? Discuss. So that's a 2020 mains question. Discuss the relationship between poverty and social exclusion, right? So that's 2016 mains question. And distinguish between people being socially excluded and people excluding themselves socially in society. So self-imposed isolation, right? So that's a 2013 mains question, right? So again, you can download model answers from the drop-down menu, and please do like and share and comment and subscribe. And thank you so much, and see you in the next video.